Hi there, welcome back to Mastering the Young Band. For this episode, I wanted to talk about articulation specifically for your beginners. I want to show you how I approach articulation with my beginners. Now, you can use this also with your second and third year players if you're just finding that their articulation is lacking and they need some extra work. So with beginners, how I teach articulation is I actually start with the syllable da, trying to get them to not use too much tongue, to lighten up on their tongue. So a typical sequence, what I do when we're articulating is I'll tell them, okay, just say what I say, repeat after me. I set my metronome to tempo 72. And, sorry, I had on my drum set beat. We were rocking out earlier today in band. So I'll just tell them, okay, watch me everybody, repeat after me. Da, da. Then I go to two half notes. Da, da. Da, da, da. Then four quarter notes. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Here's the next step. If you couldn't hear that on the video, that's two half notes. You'll notice I didn't even say much. It was just I sing, you sing, and then with the air, I just put my hand under my chin. The kids will just follow. They'll do it. In my band, we sing all the time. We don't even say, let's sing it. We just say, daw it, and the kids just naturally sing. It's not a big deal. Kids do it naturally anyway, and it's just something that we do. Now, after we've done it a few times, okay, we'll talk about it a little bit. Okay, why did I put my hand under my chin? And we'll discuss about we don't want our chin to move when we are tonguing. With the specific instruments, we'll talk about where the tongue goes. You know, for the upper brass, we talk about it touching where the top teeth meet the roof of the mouth. For low brass, we talk about the tongue hitting more the center of the tooth. And then we'll do it again. And we talk about not moving the jaw. That's kind of our first goal. And I usually, especially on the first day, I just do whole notes, half notes. I don't even add the quarter notes. So we'll do a few more rounds of just air. They repeat it back to me in half notes. Then I get my instrument. Tell them to put their hand under the jaw. Reminding them where their tongue hits. Then I'll tell them, okay, I don't say concert F with beginners, but I'll tell them the notes that they play, and then we'll go I play, you play. And I tell them if they can, keep their hand under their jaw. We do that usually 4 times. Everything I do in beginning band and band, I try to do 4 repetitions to let them just, get some of the wrinkles out and try some things a few times. And then I'll usually do a DTR on just half notes and just see how students are doing and not moving their jaw. Some common things that you're gonna see. Once you teach them to do that, you'd be surprised at how few kids actually move their jaw when they're tonguing. Clarinet's a different animal, as you know. Articulating on the clarinet, it's very challenging to get it right. They have to have their tongue up high, touching the back molars, and just getting that tongue to hit the tip of the reed can be a challenge for beginners for a little while. Here's a couple of things to look for. If you see this part moving when your clarinet's tongue, it's because they're too much of their tongue or their tongue is too low. Let's see if I can show you. Here's what you're gonna see from some beginners. Watch this part of my jaw. closer, you can see that. What was happening there is I dropped my tongue down and I was coming at the reed like this. When you raise your tongue up and barely move your tongue to the tip of the reed, that's when that goes away. You can see there's no movement there now. If I drop the tongue, you see more of that movement. So if you see that in your clarinets, that's what's happening, is they've dropped their tongue and they're coming at the reed down low in their mouth instead of coming straight at it like that. So with my beginners, we just do whole note, 2 half note, quarter, quarter, half note, and quarter notes for quite a while. Then I jump right to 16th notes, starting at about, I would say, late October, early November. We try to move to 16th notes as quickly as we can, because if a student can tongue 16th notes at a slow tempo, like tempo 56, then their mechanism, how they're approaching their articulation, is correct. If they cannot tongue 16th notes at tempo 56, mechanically they're doing something wrong, and then you can fix it. Some of us get scared of articulation because you'll hear something wrong, you'll see something wrong, and you're not quite sure how to fix it. Let me show you first the exercise I do when we do 16th notes, and then let me give you a couple tips and pointers when you go down the row and hear your kids play. So here's tempo 56. When I introduce 16th notes, same thing, I don't tell the kids much. I just say, okay, here we go, everybody. I, da, you, da. Repeat after me. Da, 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 da. They sing it back. Da, 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 da. Then we'll go air. Turn the metronome down so you can hear that better. Then we go on the instrument. Concert F, but again, I tell them their notes. I'll go 4 times. I'll try to move so you can see I'm trying not to move anything here. And we'll just start with that, those 16th notes. We'll go 4 times, talk about it, do another 4, and then I'll usually do the down the row. If you have taught them their articulation correctly with the quarter notes, you'll be surprised that at that 16th note, you'll have over 90% of your kids that can play 16th notes already. And again, if they can play it, that means mechanically they have set themselves up correctly to play it. Now, here's a couple common symptoms that you're going to see with beginners. Let's talk about brass first. So, listen to this one. That's one that you'll hear from beginners. I was tonguing between my teeth. I was putting my tongue there instead of touching. What I tell my trumpets and horns is touching where the top of the tooth meets the roof of the mouth. I know some horn players like it lower, but I like to go a little bit high to begin with, and if we need to lower it as we go to get a more clear articulation, especially for horns, then we can. But that was between the teeth. Another one that's common with trumpets is this one, where they're just stopping their air. And how I fix that is I'll have them go, here's what you're doing. And then I'll have them do that back to me. Now here's the correct version. They go back. They'll go, okay, now let's do the correct version with air. Here we go, full instrument. And some students can fix it right away. They get it, they understand how they're stopping their air. Some students, it takes a while for them to feel that air rushing through and their tongue just kind of denting the air. The other one is, of course, the jaw moving. Most of the time, again, if you've taught your students well with quarter notes, you're not going to see that, especially if you reinforce this. You're not going to generally see that. For your clarinets, Most common things, again, is you're gonna see this moving, or this is just moving so much here, okay? They gotta get that tongue up and barely touch the tip of the reed. If they're tonguing too low, you're gonna get this sound. My tongue was kind of doing that on the reed, almost like a slap tongue. What I recommend you do is, if you don't have the answer, like sometimes when you get DTR, a kid is doing something, you're like, I'm not sure what you're doing. What you can tell them is like, okay, I'm not quite sure what you're doing. I'm gonna try that on my own. I'm gonna see if I can figure out what you're doing, and then next class I'm gonna try to have a tip for you. And then what I recommend you do is in your planning period sometime, try to reenact what that student was doing. See if you can get the same sound and figure out what it is. Another great thing to tell kids to help them with their awareness is just go, picture that you have a video camera in your mouth and ask yourself, what is your tongue doing? Is your tongue staying up high as a clarinet player? Is it down low as a brass player? Is the tip of the tongue hitting your teeth, or is it going between? Try to really picture what's happening inside your mouth. And a lot of times if kids just think about it, they can figure out what they were doing incorrectly and fix it. So I go to 16th notes pretty darn quick in beginning band. I start at tempo 56, then I start inching it up, tempo 58, 60. Then second semester, we actually do articulation checkoffs with my beginners, where they play that rhythm. You just heard the 4 16th notes. Then they play some other 16th note rhythms. And so what they'll do, they're gonna do this in Flipgrid. They're gonna have different tempos that they check off with me. The first tempo they check off is tempo 60. Here's what the check off rhythm sounds like. The second rhythm. Third rhythm. Then the next tempo is 72, then we go 84, after that we go 92, then sometimes I go 98 and then 104, but it's about every 6 to 8 beats per minute is what they do. And you'll be surprised, you're gonna get some beginners that can articulate at tempo 120, da 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 da, and you're just like, holy cow. And what's interesting is sometimes the kids that can articulate really quickly are the ones that maybe don't have the best tone or maybe struggle with fingerings, but they can articulate. And it's kind of fun to see those kids that are struggling in other areas do really well in articulation. So that's my approach to articulation. As you notice, is mainly around the technique and speed with beginners. I'm not concerned as much with staccato accent. We do talk about it with beginners, but I'm really concerned with if they can do things quickly and at faster tempos, it's a sign that their mechanism, their technique is correct. So really recommend you try working with your beginners on articulation early. Try to get those beginners started on 16th notes. If you can't do it in the first semester, that's okay. I have my kids every other day for 80 minutes. We also have a 3-week summer program that we start them. So maybe for you, you start 16th notes in January, February, March. But do try to get to it as it makes sense for your program, and it really exposes if your students are articulating correctly with the correct mechanism. So try some of those ideas out, and hopefully they're helpful.